is Dr. Bob Flower, and this is Friday, July 29th, 2017, Master Pattern Report on the Gilchrist International TV station. And welcome. You see our phone number above. If you have, did I say 29th? I'm a day ahead of myself. It's the 28th. Okay. You see our phone number if you have any calls. Try and get to call before the show is over, not after. Okay, so we have a very special guest today. Special, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And this is Bobbie Flower Cox, my beautiful, talented attorney daughter. And we're going to be talking about a very esoteric practice today known as real estate property taxes. How to deal with your real estate property taxes and how to challenge them, how to get them reduced, how to know whether or not you're overtaxed, all of these issues. In fact, if you have any related questions, Bobbie Ann has been in practice for approximately 20 years, and formerly was with the law firm of Nixon Peabody in the city as an environmental attorney, and then left that practice and went out on our own, joined our firm as an independent counsel who specializes in property tax consulting for just about 20 years. And has had great success in the New York State area. Okay, so if you're in the New York area, and even if you're outside of the area, the laws are pretty much similar. Pay attention because there's a lot of interesting information. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's. I think one of the first questions that we have to deal with is, how does one know, or how can one determine whether or not they're being overtaxed on their property?
Right. So that's a great question. It's definitely the place to start. If you own a property and you feel like the taxes are too much, the best way to find out if you can challenge them and get them lowered is to reach out to us. We do a complimentary analysis, a preliminary analysis, completely free. There's no charge. And we take a look at the property, whether it's a residential property or a commercial property. We'll do an analysis and we'll let you know if it's overtaxed or not. If it's overtaxed, we're happy to help you get those numbers down. What we do is we lower the assessment on a property, and then resultingly the taxes go down.
Okay, so now you say that this analysis is free?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
No obligation. No obligation.
Right. So there's no obligation. We do the analysis. If there's no case, there's no case. We'll tell you that right up front. We're not going to fabricate the facts or fabricate a case because we do work on a contingency fee, which means that we only get paid at the end of the process, only if we're successful. If we're not successful, then you don't owe us a fee at the end of the process. So, we have every reason why we will do a terrific analysis, be very upfront with you, and let you know whether or not there's a case there, because we don't want to take on a case if we feel that in the end we won't actually get you a reduction.
Right, okay, and that's a very good point, because in effect, people have nothing to lose, right? I mean, they don't have to put up money.
Right.
If things don't go right, they're not losing anything.
Right.
Okay. One other question that I find people are curious about is, by virtue of this process, can your taxes ever go up?
Right. So that's a great question because so many people ask me that question. So, no. A municipality can't penalize you. If you grieve the taxes, they can't come back and say, oh, let's get that one. They grieved their taxes and they got a reduction. So they can't look at the property and say, You're grieving the taxes, you know what? They're not high enough. We're gonna raise them even higher. They're not allowed to do that, number one. Number two, we wouldn't even take on a case that we thought the property taxes
Right.
were too low.
Yeah, because you're working on a contingency
Contingency.
basis, and if you don't
Right.
produce, you don't get paid.
Right.
Okay, all right. Let me ask you another question. What would you say is your, the percentage of victory or successful petitions
Right.
Overall?
So our success rate is extremely high because we do that analysis upfront in the beginning before we even take a client on. So I would say on the residential side, 99% success rate. We may have to pull out of a residential case if some factor comes up that we didn't know before. For example, if the property owner doesn't live in the house.
Okay.
And they didn't tell us that in the beginning.
Okay.
We're technically not allowed to grieve that as a residential property. So I would say our success rate on residential is about 99%,
Yeah,
barring one of those odd situations. Commercial, 100%. We really have never really lost a
Really?
commercial case.
100%, okay.
We're very good with our preliminary upfront analysis that we don't charge for, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's very interesting. Now, here's another question that I've had put to me. Let's assume that somebody comes along and they hire you, and you say, well, yeah, you have a good case, and you end up reducing their properties, let's say 20%, all right? Let's say it goes from $10,000 a year to $8,000 a year. Is it going to stay like that? Like next year, can the assessor or the city or the town raise it back up to 10,000 or 9,000 or?
So yes, that's a very good question. So
I keep asking all these good
I
questions.
know,
Did you notice that?
you're so
Okay.
informed.
Yeah.
So basically, if you live in a municipality or you own a property in a municipality that is not at 100% assessment, which means that the assessed value given to your property by the assessor's office is not equal to your actual market value, then no, they can't raise it back up the next year. So if you live in a municipality or own a property in a municipality that is at 100%, which means your assessed value equals the market value of the property, then there is the possibility that they could change it again down the line.
Okay.
So, for example, Bronxville's at 100% assessment, Scarsdale's at 100% assessment, Pelham's at 100% assessment, now the town of Greenberg's at 100% assessment. So those places would fall under the category of they can change your assessment down the line. But places like Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Yonkers, Eastchester, Cortland, those towns and cities are not at 100% assessment. So once we reduce your assessment and you're saving money on the taxes, that number is really only going to go back up if you do something to the property to improve it. You add an extension or an addition on the property, you renovate or add a bathroom or finish your basement or put a third story on. Those things will trigger a reassessment of the property because you're improving the value of that property.
Okay.
So in that case it does make sense that you would get a new assessment when you're done doing the work that you have been doing.
Okay, good. Now, isn't there a possibility, and let's talk about a municipality where it's not at 100%, okay?
Right.
So you reduce the taxes down to $8,000, all right? And then all of a sudden, next year, the following year, the client calls you up and says, hey, you know what, my taxes just went up to $8,500. I thought you had it reduced to $8,000.
Right.
Right? Will
Yes.
that happen, and why would that happen?
Okay,
How
so-
would that happen?
Right. So if you have,
Another good question.
of course,
Yeah,
of
okay,
course.
all right.
So if you have an assessment, we get it lowered, the assessment's going to stay the same until you do something, until the town or city does a citywide reassessment of all the properties, Or you do something, like I said before, you make an addition, you renovate a bathroom, anything that you need a permit to do, that'll trigger a reassessment on your house. If you don't do that, and if the municipality doesn't do a citywide or townwide revaluation, then you're gonna keep that assessment that we got it lowered to. And if your taxes go up down the line, it's because they raised the tax rate per thousand, not because they raised your assessment.
Okay, all right.
So every year,
Yeah,
a municipality, it's done by the council, whoever, you know, the city legislature, for example,
Right.
in a city. They'll vote and they'll say, this is what we need the tax rate to be this year, because we look at our budget, we see what all of our expenses are, we look at our income and we say, uh-oh, we don't have enough income
yes,
to pay for all of our expenses, so they raise the tax rate up, which makes everybody's property taxes go up.
okay, all
But it's
right.
not because they're changing your assessment.
All right, so the assessment stays the same,
Right.
but the tax rate changes, right?
Yes.
And as I know very well, that rate never goes down. It always,
Right.
it either stays the same or it goes up,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now,
But then you'll see savings every year, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, we got that assessment lower, it's gonna stay lower, so as the tax rate increases each year, you're saving more money each year.
okay, all right, yes.
Because had we not lowered that assessment and we left it up here,
You'd be that much, you'd be
Your taxes-
20% higher.
your taxes would
Okay.
be that much higher.
All right.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you this. Time period.
Mm-hmm.
Residentially and commercially. How much time does this process take?
Right, so residential, on average, speaking in, let's say, Westchester County, you would expect 4 to 6 months, generally speaking, to have a grievance done.
Okay.
From time of filing with the municipality to the end, about 4 to 6 months. That's going to depend on how many people are filing, how backlogged is the municipality, how backlogged is the court,
Okay.
if you're doing the SCAR appeals. Commercial does take longer. It's a different section of the law. It's a different section of the court, different judge. So the commercial tend to take, I would say, a couple years, 2 to 4 years, sometimes 5 or 6. It really depends on, again, how many people are grieving in that municipality, how many people are grieving in general, because it's one section of the court and one judge.
Okay.
So there are a whole lot of cases, commercial cases, in that one part.
Yeah.
So it does take
So
time.
it takes longer.
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Commercial
And-
definitely takes
and-
longer.
And there's more involved, right, with the commercial
Yes,
filing than there is with a,
absolutely. The commercial filings you have to do every single year. So if we start in 2017 and we don't actually finish until, let's say, 2020, we have to file each year all the documentation.
okay.
We have to go to court for all of those cases. So we have to go for 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Right.
So it is a lot more work. It is a lot more detailed. It is a lot more court appearances. So yeah, it's a more drawn out process.
So when a commercial client signs up, do they continue to pay their taxes, their full
Oh,
taxes? Okay, so how does that work? I mean, you know, what,
Right.
so you go 4 years and you're paying a high rate of tax?
Mhm, right. So then what happens is, as long as we file our papers in each of those years, when we reach the end and we have our settlement, that municipality has to refund for each year the amount of taxes that the client overpaid.
Okay, so if, let's say I have a shopping area and you reduce my taxes by, let's say, $20,000 a year, right? At the end.
Right,
And it took you 4 years to do that.
right.
So then I'm going to get back $20,000 a year for each year?
If that's right, if that's
that's
how we,
the s-
if that's
yeah.
how we structure the settlement,
Yeah.
then yes, you could get 20,000 for the year 17, for year 18, for year 19, for year 20, right.
So I get back $80,000,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Less whatever fees.
Right, less the fees that we
Yeah.
would have, which again are contingency fees.
Are there a lot of fees other than your fees? I mean, is everything?
Well, our legal, right, so our legal fee is standard contingency legal fee for commercial. And then the client also pays for the filing fees that the court
Okay.
mandates us. We can't actually file papers with the court unless we pay the fee.
How much
So,
are they roughly?
I mean, per year, probably $400 to $500 a year in filing
okay.
fees.
All right. Okay.
Residential is very different. Residential is a one-time filing fee, $30 that gets you into your appeal with the
Okay.
court.
All right. All right. So that sounds promising. Okay. So now let me ask you another question. I at my home, I get these mailings from these people who claim to do the same thing, the property tax consulting.
Right.
I mean, I get like, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 a year.
Yeah.
What could you tell me about these people? I mean, why? Of course, you're an attorney, and most of these others are not attorneys. But what about that? I mean, how does
Right.
one know?
Right. So, you get what you pay for in life. If you respond to somebody that blindly sends you out a mailing, says sign here on the dotted line, send me back the paper and I'll lower your taxes, in my opinion, I don't know, is it very professional? Is it trustworthy? Did you pick up the phone? Did you talk to these people? In my experience where clients have used a company like that, or had a family member or a friend use a company like that, it's bad news. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't have a lot of experience. They're just kind of doing this
Right.
to do it.
Yes.
And-
There's a lot of money to be made, especially if they're doing a gross volume type of thing.
If they're
right?
sending out mass mailings across, the county, and they get even a small number of people to respond, they're still making money. But they don't have your best interest at heart. They never came to your house. They never saw pictures of your house. They never talked to you on the phone. Yeah, they don't know. They probably don't even know where you live. They're not usually local, those companies.
Well, how about their contacts and connections with with the assessor, with the attorney for the municipality?
Yeah.
Do they have that same type of background that say that you do?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they don't have the background. I don't know what their relationship is. Again, in my experience talking to the hearing officers, the judges, the assessors of all the towns and cities, they don't look fondly on those companies that do those mailings because, again, they don't really know what they're doing. They're just clogging up the system. They take anybody. They don't do preliminary analysis to see if there's a case. They take anybody and everybody they can, so they're clogging up the system. The assessors get annoyed. So it's not a good situation. And I did have a client, this is really a stunning story. I had a client in Westchester and signed up with one of these companies, got it in the mail, signed on the dotted line, never spoke to them, never heard from them again, mailed it back in. Then I did her neighbor's taxes. So her neighbor was very pleased, she called me up and she said, "Oh, you just did my neighbor's taxes. You got a great reduction for her. Can you do mine?" I took a look. She had a case. I did all the work for the whole year and I came to a settlement. It was a terrific settlement. And the municipality said, "We can't sign the settlement because this woman grieved last year with a company, one of those mail-in companies, and they got her a $600 reduction. And you can't get a reduction 2 years in a row with going through the SCAR process, going through the appeal process." So she got a reduction of $600 the year before with this company through the appeal process, the SCAR, and I couldn't sign my $6,000 reduction for her.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that company didn't know what they were doing, got her a minuscule $600 reduction.
Yeah.
I got her a $6,000 reduction, and I couldn't even finalize it because we were barred. I had
Okay.
to wait a whole nother year, file it all over again.
So that company cost them $5,400.
Exactly.
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 Okay.
That company made them pay a whole nother year of higher
Yeah,
taxes.
Yeah. And
So-
one thing I've heard from attorneys and assessing officers about a lot of these other practitioners is that they negotiate in bulk.
Right.
right? I mean,
That's
they'll
what
come
I've
in and
heard,
say,
yeah.
well, we have 10 properties here, and we're looking for an average of 20%. How about, you give us 15% across the board?
Yeah, I've heard
Right?
that too.
Yeah. I mean, is that correct? Do you hear that a lot?
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and that's one of the objections to a lot of these people.
Right, right.
And most of them have not been in the business.
No, and they don't
Right?
have qualifications, you know.
I mean, our
It's
family has been in that business for almost 50 years.
Right,
Right?
right.
So, I mean, we have a lot of,
We have a-
lot of contacts.
We have a lot of contacts. We have a really strong reputation in the industry. So when
And
the
that's
assessors,
important, right? I
of
mean-
course, when the assessors or the boards of assessment review, even the judges see our name, hear us coming with a case, they know it's not a junk case. They know that we do our homework. They know that we know what we're doing, and therefore they pay attention to it.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
we don't take cases that we're not confident we can win, because why destroy the reputation that we've built for 50 years in this industry? And also, you can't really afford to work for free, right? If you
Yeah.
take a case that's not really a case, you don't get paid at the end.
Yeah.
So,
And our background is, I mean, I personally have served on 2 assessment boards of review in the city of Yonkers, which is, 4th largest city in the state. And that has given me some insight into the process behind the scenes over the years, as well as a higher level of contact,
right.
because I've dealt with these people, they know me, and consequently
Absolutely.
now that you've taken over a number of years ago, you also.
Right.
And they understand that you know the municipality and you know the business, so they can't pull some obscure law out of the box and say,
Right.
you got an issue here.
Right. They
Or-
can't pull the wool over
Yeah.
our eyes because we've been
Yeah.
doing this so long.
Right.
We know
Yeah.
the ins and outs, and and I think it's important that people look and see, where your property is located. That's really where the expert that you should be using, right? I don't grieve taxes out in Suffolk County, right? Or down in Staten Island, because that's not what I know as far as real estate.
Yeah.
These are the markets I know. I know Westchester, I know Putnam, I know Rockland, I know, this is the market.
Yeah, because
that-
I know once in a while you'll see an assessor for one municipality, and he's doing petition work in another municipality, even though he's an assessor here, and really, he doesn't know anything about the other
No,
municipality.
No.
He knows his municipality.
Right.
And he's good at that.
Right.
But he can't do the work, he can't bring an action.
right, grieve taxes in his own town, right.
Right, and they'll go around saying, well, I was an assessor for 30 years, but, but was it in a little hick village, or was it in a major city?
Right.
And, and how much do you know about these other areas? You certainly know your own area,
Right.
but you don't have the grand knowledge and experience of, for instance, when I was very active in the business, I had 3 of my former employees that became assessors. One fellow became an assessor in Yonkers. Another fellow became an assessor in Mount Vernon. And the third one was an assessor in Pelham and in Cortland, both. So, we worked together. They of course had worked for me. They knew how we handled things, and we trained them and assisted them in being assessors in their own municipality. So, and really no other firms, even law firms, don't have that background.
No, the depth of background of flower property tax consultants is very deep. You know,
Right.
everybody involved in flower property tax consultants,
All right.
you know, are assessors.
Very quickly,
and-
because we only have a few minutes left. What are your fees on both matters?
Right.
And how do the folks get in touch with you?
Right, so fees for commercial, standard is 33 1/3% of any of the savings or
okay.
refunds and taxes. And then for residential, it's 55% of the first year's tax savings.
55%, okay.
First year
Right.
tax savings.
And that's much lower than what these other folks
Oh,
are charging, right?
yeah.
They're-
Yeah, if you see anybody charging less than 55%, use that mailing or flyer or promotion as kindling would. And then anybody that's charging more is charging more because they're charging more. But yeah, I've seen 65%, I've seen 75%, but that's not what we do. We do 55%.
Great,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
so
how do they reach you?
So phone number, direct line is 914-779-7762. Otherwise, website is www.coxlawyers.com. And email bcox@coxlawyers.com.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been very informative.
Yes, thank you for
Right.
having me.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, you have a special entree.
Yes.
But, okay, so that finishes our great questions and our interview for this week. Next week, we hope to have an esteemed mortgage banker who's going to talk to you about getting financing and getting a mortgage and buying that house or that condo or co-op that's so difficult to achieve. Thank you, and I hope that you have a great week this week.
Thank you.